When do you cut your losses or give up on something and walk? When and how to decide to cut bait? Not a quitter. Too much brain damage.
Brain damage. It's a word I've been hearing more from the corporate world, actually, as people talk about when something's really hard to do and they're just causing brain damage by trying to do it. And these was actually two questions.
That's obviously a metaphor, obviously.
Yeah, it's a metaphor.
Okay.
It's a metaphor and it's a metaphor for what I talk about when I was like beating my head against the wall to try and get something done.
Okay, gotcha.
And this is one of those things that confuses people because everyone hears, including us in the SEAL teams, we hear the mantra of never quit, right? Yeah. Never quit. And it's not just a mantra that we say, it's actually what we believe.
Yeah.
And furthermore, it's not just what we say and it's not just what we believe, but it's literally how we act.
Yeah.
So that drive and that attitude of never quit, it's a powerful force. And it does push you over the edge to victory. To victory in many cases. But, and there's always a dichotomy to just about everything. There's a dichotomy to this too. Because over that attitude, you have to layer something on top of that. And that is basically strategic vision and understanding of the battlefield as a whole. So, it's like the saying of win the battle, lose the war. This is the opposite, right? Win the battle, lose the war, meaning, you stick to it right now and you might win right now, but in the long run, you're going to lose. This is the opposite, where you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to lose this battle right now, but I'm going to win the war in the long run. So you absolutely need to know when you got to stop beating your head against the wall. You've got to know that. I personally draw my limit at 27 times. After I've beaten my head against the wall 27 times, on the 28th time, I'm going to say, you know what? I bet there's another way to do this, or maybe this isn't a battle worth fighting. Now, the main reason I think why people get caught in the trap of banging their head against the wall or not knowing when to quit is because, and again, quit is a strong word, and it's almost hard for me to say right now because it's not knowing when to quit. I'm not talking about quitting.
Yeah,
I'm
like
talking
you're
about
like, give up.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about making a strategic assessment of an unwinnable situation and deciding to disengage only so you can re-engage with superior firepower and crush the enemy.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So there's a big difference between that and quitting. Quitting means you curl up into a ball and wait to die. That's what quitting is. And I don't support that under any circumstances. So when does it happen where it happens because people get emotional? They get too emotional about whatever obstacles in front of them. They get crazy about it. And they start seeing the obstacle as not only the battle, but also as the war. And they get lost in their own determination. And I've seen this with some SEAL buddies of mine. They're so determined that they will not stop, even when it's completely detrimental. And they do it with just about everything. They'll be determined at anything. They'll be hurting themselves training. They'll be, determined to drink harder than anybody else. Just anything you can throw at them, and they're determined to win at that, and you're actually losing.
Yeah.
So how do you prevent that from happening? Is you have to, again, common theme here, you have to detach. You have to detach yourself. You have to be able to step back away from the problem enough to look at it from a strategic viewpoint and say, okay, what's going on here? What's the risk? What's the reward? How much am I willing to sacrifice right now? And how is that sacrifice going to impact me tomorrow or the next day or next week?
Yeah.
And then once you've detached and you've weighed and you've seen what the real value of this immediate objective is, then you can assess and make a logical decision based not on your emotion, but on the actual impact of the situation in the overall strategic picture.
Yeah, that how you're saying when you weigh the detriments and the rewards, and I think that really makes it real clear when you can assess and be like, oh, all of this, we're getting all this, like all this detrimental stuff when we're trying to get this, this one benefit, out of this person or out of this situation or whatever. And when you're using up your resources or sacrificing more resources than you are gaining ground, then that seems like a clear time to at the very least start thinking about disengaging.
Yeah, and you got to detach to be able to notice that. And I notice this in jiu-jitsu all the time. People try and pass. The passing guard is the simplest example.
Yeah.
People will just like do one guard pass.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work, and they do it again, and it doesn't work, and they do it again, and it doesn't work, they do it again, and they go on and on and on until they're exhausted, they get swept, they get mounted, and then they get put to tap. And it's because they were stubborn and they didn't detach and say, I mean, after you've tried to pass a guy's guard 14 times in a row the same way and it hasn't worked, why is it going to work the 15th time? The answer is it's not. Try something else.
I was actually trying to think of a solid answer to that.
There is no solid answer. And it's the same thing. I used to see this put in SEALs through training. They'd get like bogged down in a bad situation, and they would just get focused on that one problem. One room in a building, they'd be like, no, send more guys into it. Everyone's just getting sprayed with paintball and put down in the training operation. And no, it's 2 more guys. And eventually everyone's just, it's training, but everyone's dead. And they're like, oh, I don't know what happened. You just didn't, they got focused on it and it cost them. So the leader's got to be able to step back and detach and take a look at the situation and decide, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and change course right now. I'm not going to quit, but I'm going to adjust, make a strategic adjustment.
Yeah, and it's weird how those semantics can really change your outlook on the whole task when you use the word quit versus disengage, or another one with quit, like I said, is give up. Give it up. I mean, unless it's something negative like smoking or something like that. You're going to quit smoking, or I'm going to give up smoking. That's good. But obviously smoking's negative. But any kind of task or anything that requires effort, if you quit or quote unquote give up, it's like, it's hard to have that sound like a good thing,
Yeah. And one thing obviously it applies to combat. It applies to jiu-jitsu, as we just talked about, but also, you look at what you're doing day to day and the little things in your life that you're trying to make work, or in a business that you're trying to make something happen. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people get so addicted to their plan.
Yeah.
They get their ego is wrapped around their plan. Their plan is like 50% tactics and technique, and it's 50% their own ego. Mm-hmm. And so when that person's plan starts to fail, guess what? They don't want to let it go because it's all wrapped up in their ego. So they just push it further. They push it further. They push it further. And especially if that person's in a senior position, well, then everyone's kind of just falling in line and they're looking at them. They all know. They all know when they're at the bottom of the chain of command. They're all looking at this person saying, hey, buddy, it's not working.
Yeah.
Let's disengage and fall back and figure out a new plan of attack. And then let's reapproach the target from a different angle. Let's flank this target. Yeah. So if you're in a business, if you're in a relationship, and you've got a situation where you're trying to make something work a certain way and it's not, maybe you got to disengage and you got to come with a different angle of attack so that you can get the big win in the long run. Yeah,
and with relationships, obviously it's the same dynamic, but it's different because it's the same because when you're in let's say a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, whatever, even husband-wife, let's say it's not working. Let's say one of them's abusive, right? Meanwhile, the other one's trying to quote-unquote make it work. Mm-hmm. And if they end up leaving, you gave up on him, you quit. I don't think you'd ever say you'd quit the relationship, but we'll just say you gave up on the relationship.
Right.
Well, he's been abusing her for 10 years already, you know, or in your case, 27 years, or, you know, whatever the number is. And you gotta.
I do not abuse my wife.
Right. But, you know, as far as your numbers go, 27. But again, like if you say, "Oh, you gave up on the relationship," it's kind of like it's the girl's fault a little bit. Like maybe she shouldn't have done that almost, you know. But yeah, you disengage, and if you want to go for the win in that relationship, and if you really want to maintain the relationship, don't let it be a husband-wife relationship. Maybe go back to being neighbors or something like that. Even though in an abusive relationship that might not work, but I'm just saying theoretically.
Yeah, I'm not sure about all that.
I'm sure, man. I'm sure.
But I do know that if you find yourself trying repeatedly to make something happen and it's not happening, try a different route. Yeah. Don't consider yourself a quitter. Consider yourself a strategist or a tactician.